Hey, how you doing today? I had a feeling like God really wanted me to talk about something, or at least from my point of view, speak my heart on it, because it seems to come up a lot in the world. And a lot of times people just blame God, and I don't know. In some regards, I can see how you might want to, how we could, and in some regards, I can't see how that. Subject came up as far as free will, which every man has free will, and God gave every man free will. Funny part about it is it seems like it's very similar to parenting. If you think of God as our father and we're the kids, and by the way, my name is King's Kid, it makes more sense. How many of you have kids and you try to teach your kids everything to do? You make yourself available to them, but they still seem to touch the hot stove. Don't touch the hot stove. Psst. Ah! They touch the hot stove. So now you're playing clean up. You got to go take them to the hospital if it's that bad, or you got to get all the solutions and everything to help them, and try to soothe them emotionally, physically, and so to make them feel better. But if you really think about it, they cause their own pain. You told them not to do something, and they did it anyway. So, how many times have God told us to do things, and we just did anyway? It's not that He wanted us to go through the pain, but with free will, that means we actually have to submit. If we want God to intervene on our behalf, we have to submit ourselves to Him. We have to submit our will to Him. And if we do that, that is how God is able to interact with the natural world. Now, God can interact with the natural world, but I think the things that He has given us authority over, He cannot overrun our authority in this world. And for that to happen, He actually has to work through someone to allow His power to manifest. He has to have a physical point of contact, which is my theory about why we don't see God put His hands on everything. Because a lot of times I don't think He has the hands, or in this situation, the people that are willing to submit their will to Him to accomplish good things in the world. A prime example is, why did God need Jesus? Why did God have to come down in the form of Jesus to save us? If you think about it, it's a perfect scenario based on what I just said. God has to have a physical point of contact with the earth, or somebody on the earth who has authority in a certain area, such as our own lives, to be effective. In this singular point, Adam and Eve, they basically fell from grace, and that began a departure from God. I mean, a serious separation from God. If you read Genesis, you can see how man and God were basically, hey, freshly born, all good. Then sin happened, and as you continue to read the Bible, you can just see how man and God just got further and further and further away. It got to a point to where, just like Adam and Eve were scared of God, man didn't even want to talk to God. This is when they were bringing up the law of Moses. And they said, no, we don't want to talk to God. We want Moses to talk to God. And so that was a further division, not based on necessarily good thinking, was more fear. people were afraid that, they went up to God, God was just going to kill them. Wasn't true. Basically, what kills us is sin. Sin, the wages of sin is death. That's how death is entered into. That's how we interface with death, is through sin. So even on the negative side of it, sin, the only way sin can really affect our lives is if we give sin authority. When it comes into physical contact with us, not the thought, the actual act of sin, that's when we interface with death. And in the same token, how we can interface with God is by saying, submitting our will, like we can submit our sin, our bodies to sin, we can submit our will to God. And when we come together, God is able to do whatever He wants to do through us if we're willing to do it. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6 says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not to your own understanding. Acknowledge Him in all your ways, and He will make your path straight." So if we submit ourselves to God, and that includes listening. I mean, a lot of times we do a lot of talking, which is, otherwise known as prayer. But we also have to spend ample time listening to God. Kind of like, even we want our kids to listen to us, but how many times have they not listened to us? We say, hey, don't go do so-and-so. And then all of a sudden, next thing we know, they just did so-and-so. Now they're hurt, craziness is going on, in debt, you name it, it's happening. But it's not for lack of us telling them what to do. It's not even a lack of us loving them, being there for them. Sometimes they still do crazy stuff. We did it when we were kids, Some of us more than others, Even if we had families. We had a mother and a father. One thing I like to bring up is protecting kids. I had somebody talk about sin. They were not sin, there was more, why does God allow kids to die? I'm like, okay, first of all, I don't think God would allow any kid to die if He was working through us. If we were obedient to God, follow all 10 commandments, there wouldn't be all that junk. First off, okay, but disobedience to God's law is a reason that that people are able to physically affect other people. Their sin physically affects other people because they don't want to listen to God. We don't want to sometimes listen to do what God tells us to do. Point blank. And if we're doing the same thing like, hey, don't touch the stove, we touch the stove anyway, we're going to get hurt unless we don't feel pain. And that's a whole other issue right there. But in regard to protecting children, it reminds me of a story of Jesus when He was born. When Jesus was born, first off, one of the main component you could think about in Jesus being able to be born, okay, was Jesus or God talked to Mary. He said, Mary, you're, you're highly favored. You're highly favored of the Lord. Lord has blessed you, whatever He said, okay. I don't remember off the top of my head. But He basically said, this is what I want to do. I want to birth Jesus through you. And she was like, okay, that's nice. How's that going to happen? And God said, hey, I'm going to have the Holy Spirit come upon you. You're going to become pregnant. You're going to have a kid without knowing a man. She's like, all right, cool. God, if you're saying that, I believe you. I'm a willing vessel. Let's do it. Okay? Now, on the other hand, she was actually betrothed or set up to marry Joseph. Joseph was a pretty cool guy, a very honorable guy, and he found out that Mary was pregnant. He's like, yeah, you supposed to be mine, and we supposed to belong to each other and all this stuff, but you already pregnant, so that gonna be a little bit of problem. So he had in his mind he was going to basically marry her, and then quietly divorce her so that she would not endure the shame of being a single mother, basically, you know, or being having sex out of wedlock. So he was going to be cool with it, even though I don't think he was really happy with it. But God came to him, said, "Hey, Joseph, yo man, don't be afraid to marry Mary. What she has is of God." And God came there and he confirmed it with Joseph. But Joseph, if you think about it, just like both of them, Joseph and Mary both had the how do you say, decision to either go with God, allow God to use them, or say no. Both of them could have said no. Mary could have said no. Joseph could have said no, and it could have been Frida and Freddie, for all we know, if they had said no. Okay, but in this situation, they were willing to let God physically use them, be obedient. They were physically obedient to God to allow God to work in the world. Okay, hope you following me on that. So they went ahead on, had a baby. Just like God said, everything was cool. They went on to Bethlehem, where they were in Bethlehem at the time. And another interesting thing popped up. Herod, who, I think it was Herod, he was jealous, basically. He's like, you know what, a king is born? Oh no, he ain't taking my stuff. You know what I'm saying? We about to get rid of him. Okay, and he was trying to get the Magi to basically cough up where he was so that he could go kill him. So God, further along in the story, basically told the Magi, don't go back to him. He crazy. So the Magi went ahead and went on, and once Herod figured that, oh man, these dudes didn't even fulfill what they said, even though he knew he was going to try to kill him. So he goes out and he basically does one of the first recorded, I guess, abortions. But he did it with live babies over, like, I can't remember if it was like from an infant to approximately like 2 years or something, like 2 years old. And he killed all of them in that area just to try to kill Jesus. Now the interesting part of that is God told Mary and Joseph that it was going to happen. He's like, look, gave him a dream, I think. Said, hey, somebody's trying to kill you. I need you to go to Egypt or wherever they went to. They were like, okay, cool. So they left, went to Egypt. Key point, they listened to what God told them. And because they listened to what God told them, Jesus did not get murdered like the other kids. Okay? They listened. They listened when Jesus was going to be born or conceived. They listened when Herod was trying to kill them. They went down to Egypt. I think they were going to come back. And then again, God said, "Oh, whoa, don't go. You need to stay where you are or go to another place." And again, they avoided Jesus being killed because they were listening to God. Key point, listening to God. But I'm going to say about 2 key points. Really, they listened to God and they obeyed God. So, just in that scenario alone, us, by being submitted to God, is the best way we can actually protect our kids. We can tell them about God, use God's words to help them learn how to make good decisions, a lot of different things. And, I could go into a bunch of different areas, but try to stay on track. What you want to say, Lord? But listening to God and being obedient to God is so important for us, specifically because we have free will. And because we have free will, if we want God to interact on our behalf, we have to submit our will to Him. In doing that, that is where He is able to use His hands and touch us. Because now He has a physical point of contact on the planet that He can do things. In this world, our footprint is as big as we desire it to be, as big as we want to go. If you want to go to a different country and, let's say sell a different product or sell a product or something like that, because you go over there and you make contacts with people, otherwise known as networking, you branch out your influence and your ability to do things. Same thing with God. God is into networking. He's into partnerships. And He can only do that through us. If you see a situation to where a kid is getting hurt, something bad is happening, I would think we should look at it in two different ways. One, what are the miracles that happen that protect the kids? And I would wonder if they are actually being prayed for by their parents. Those are the kids that are probably being protected, I would think. And then you probably have some more, because just because you have one parent praying for somebody, that don't mean they're not praying for a whole bunch of other people as well. They could be praying for the whole school. And believe it or not, if you have some kids that perish, we pray that don't happen. But if it does happen, it could possibly be way worse than it actually was. And then if you have kids that do pass, I wonder, did they even have anybody praying for them? Are you sure? If they were praying for them, do they actually believe that God is actually going to protect them? Are they really Christians like they say they are? Or are they just going through the motions of being a Christian? So we need to be the hands and the feet of God. A scripture in the Bible talks about how the church is actually the body of Christ. The body of Christ has a head, it has arms, it has hands, you have torso, you have heart, brain, you have legs, you have feet. You have a whole bunch of things in the body, just in the human body alone. But if you think about it in the context we're talking, is that God is able to actually affect the world through us, through people who are willing to submit their lives to Him, to His Spirit. And on top of that, listening. If we listen to God, it can help us avoid a whole lot of situations. A whole lot of situations. But how many times do we just not listen to God? How many times do we look at God? We may even hear His voice, but we'll be like, you know what? I'm going to do it my way. Then we, just like that person, kid touching the hot stove, burn your hands. Now, come back to God. Come back to God. Now you got to get healed. You got to get emotionally calmed down. Different things that have to happen just to bring us back to where we were. If it's not even something that's really, really detrimental. If we did something crazy, let's just say we went out and we were just speeding all the way down the highway and on a rainy day or a snowy day, and all of a sudden we get into a car accident, boom, now we got a whole bunch of issues. We just took one bad situation and we just put it into a whole nother situation. Whereas if we just said, all right, Lord, I'm in this bad situation, please Help me. I am stressed out. I don't know what to do. Show me what to do. And just because you pray, that don't necessarily mean that God's going to answer you physically back in an audible voice in all regards. God may just answer you through somebody else. He may answer you through reading the Bible. He may answer you through a TV show. He may answer you through your kids. He may answer you through the person you hate at work. But if we're open and we're always listening, that gives God more opportunities to talk to us. And I think the only reason why sometimes God even uses other people or other means to talk to us is because we're just not quiet. We haven't got to the point to where we can just be still and be quiet and just listen to God's voice. Because that's even possible. That is even possible. But God needs us to be his hands and his feet around the world. He needs us to use our authority on this planet, our free will, to exercise his will. And we can only do that by submitting ourselves to him and being obedient to what he said. Just like Joseph and Mary were able to avoid calamity, we can do the same by listening to God. That being said, that is not going to be the fate of everybody. Jesus, prime example, was crucified. And that was God's will. That was God's will. But his will was for Jesus to be crucified so that he could save everybody else. It would be the perfect sacrifice for everybody else. So sometimes bad things may have to happen for God's will, for God to be able to actually help somebody else. You know, prayerfully that's not going to happen, but sometimes it does. I mean, sometimes you're going to be broke. Sometimes you may be humiliated. Sometimes you may be embarrassed. Sometimes you may be physically hurt. But all those things are just parts of life. Part of the struggle is even coming back from things like that, knowing that despite the situation you're in right now, God can bring you out of it. Break your leg, oh, God can bring you back to the place where you can walk again. You get sick, oh, God can heal you, or he can use a doctor to heal you, or whatever, however he wants to do it. The sky's the limit. We just got to be open to it. You know what I'm saying? Don't limit God. God put people on this planet to help us. Sometimes God may want you to actually help somebody else. He may want me to help somebody else. This blog, I guess you can call it, is me trying to be obedient to God and hopefully help you. Am I going to put everything perfect in the blog? Probably not. But my desire is to show people, show you that God is good. God, he loves us. Sometimes we don't understand everything, and that's okay. That's the reason why we should talk to each other. That's the reason why we should go to church. That's the reason why we listen to the pastor. That's the reason why we study the Word. It's so that we can get closer to God. And but Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not to your own understanding. Acknowledge him in all your ways. That means everything you do, and he will direct your paths. And that includes avoiding craziness, avoiding injury. Will you avoid everything? Not necessarily. But if we can totally be submitted to God, obedient to him, we can hear his voice all the time, what can't we do? But thanks for your time. I hope I said something that will help you. And deuces.